Okay, we're recording. Let's go ahead and get started.
Okay, good morning. It is Wednesday, March 24th, 2021. I'd like to call to order the meeting of the Personnel Board. All voting members are present. First on the agenda is the approval of the previous meeting minutes. That would be from Wednesday, March 3rd, 2021. Can I get an aye for approving the previous minutes, please?
Aye. Motion to approve.
Okay. All opposed? Okay, motion passes. Number 2 on the meeting agenda is the Sergeant's Promotional Exam Timetable and Exam Format Finalization. At the last meeting, we heard from Chief Hawk, who gave us a tentative timeline for the Sergeant promotion. And Chief Hawk, could you please update us on where we are with that?
Absolutely, Chaz. Good morning, everyone. As you all are aware, we did roll out the announcement for the promotional exam. That was the deadline for officers to submit was March 1st. Shortly thereafter, we issued them all a study guide. They all have that study guide now that gives a list of recommended reading materials. So I think it's safe to assume that officers have purchased the necessary books and have undertaken studying for this promotional exam. Tentatively, we had scheduled, I believe it was the first week in June, as it stands right now, for the written part of the exam. I believe the turnaround there is maybe up to 10 business days once they are proctored and turned in for them to provide us the results of those tests, and after which the process could continue on. Chaz, I know you've discussed proctoring that exam. I believe what might be on the table this morning, though, would be if the Personnel Board decides to change the weighting of the written and oral portions. And at that point, if you folks do decide that, that'll have to be changed. And I believe Falco would jump in at that point. We might have to roll back that exam and until that is changed. But I would defer that to the solicitor and obviously the decision to you folks. But we are underway. The process is underway and the officers have began to study.
So Chief, we still are on track to have the test on Saturday, June 5th at 10 a.m. But the hangup could be if we change the composite score. There might be some who withdraw their application. Is that what we're saying?
Yeah, absolutely, Chaz. That could affect, I know that I have at least one request after the deadline was posted. Officers apparently watched the last meeting online, realized that changing the process might be a possibility. And we've had one request to now take that exam if it is indeed changed. So we are facing that as well right now. Okay. So there are 11 right now, officers that are signed up to take this promotional exam, and there could potentially be another one. I think that number is going to change based on the decision you folks make.
So Chief Hawk, the request was to take the exam if this board decides to weight the interview portion heavier. Is that accurate?
You nailed it. Yes, ma'am.
Interesting.
Yeah. What the reason is, I haven't had the officer in or anything, but yeah, that's exactly the reason.
Yeah.
Falco, did you want to weigh in if there's any issues with us moving forward with this 50-50 composite score as we proposed at the previous meeting?
Yes, I know that I had. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. I apologize. I'm working from home today, and I can see you all on the video feed, but my computer speakers weren't connected, so I'm on my cell phone for the audio. After the board meeting, I know that we've had some back and forth email exchanges between Chief Hawk, myself, you, Chaz, and I believe Bob Grimm as well, regarding the different options if there was a decision to move forward. it impacts those that weren't aware of a potential change, and that's the one officer so far who's saying that if they had known, they would have also thrown their hat in as well, because we're in a sense changing the context of the examination after the process began, and we did have a discussion about the potential impact of that if we move forward. Because it's a two-step process, first it's ultimately the initial decision of the personnel board as to whether to move forward with that change, but then it also requires action by town council as well. And I understood from an email from Bob that potentially that action from town council could take place as early as April 12th, if I recall correctly.
That's correct.
So if there is a consensus by the personnel board today to continue to move forward, and I think that was the initial response from Chaz in the back and forth communications, then it would be the town council who would also have to agree. Not sure exactly where town council, the majority of town council, falls on that issue. But if town council does agree with that recommendation and makes that change, then April 12th would be the earliest time that would occur. With that being said, then we have a group of officers who currently have the study guide, as the chief just mentioned, but a potential additional group of officers who then would want to be considered who have not received the study guide, unless, Chief, you provided it to that other officer as well. My recommendation had been, I'm sorry, Chief.
I apologize, Falco. I have not provided that to him at this time.
Okay. So that would potentially, and the reason those officers would be able to submit, even though it's after the March 1st deadline, is because of this potential change. And you do want to give them that ability as well, since they made their decision based on the current scoring of the examinations in not submitting by the March 1st deadline. So we want to then create a playing field that's level, so to speak. So my recommendation had been that if we are going to move forward with the change, that those who had already received the study guide, that we have them return those. It sounds like, though, because some weeks have passed, that practically may not be possible because they're already aware of what they should be studying and probably have already begun that process. So the only way then to level the field would be to make sure that those officers who are potentially interested now with the change would also receive the study guides and be afforded that same length of time to prepare for the examination. We're still early enough in the process, in the study period, to still move forward with the change if that's the decision of both the personnel board and the town council. Again, we just want to make sure that the playing field is level and the study guide is afforded to all potential interested officers in taking the examination. So if you want to move forward, you're going to have to set another date when those who now may be interested, if the change moves forward, to submit their letters of interest in the examination. And then potentially you may have to, depending on when that occurs, move back the date of the examination so they're provided the full, and I think that it was generally a 60-day period?
It was even going to be more than that, I think.
Yeah, March 1st to June 5th. Yeah, that's a little longer than that.
Yeah,
About 90 days.
about 90 days.
Okay.
So in
Basically,
other
to
words,
move back the date,
go ahead, Falco.
I'm sorry. To move back the date of the examination to afford the full 90 days to those, that second subset of officers who now might express an interest.
So if I can clarify, I get that if more people are interested, they should potentially have more time to study. I understand that piece of it. But we're not suggesting using a different exam, or we're simply changing the weighting. So I'm a little bit confused as to why someone would now be interested in submitting their name and wouldn't perhaps when they first had the opportunity say, you know what, I'm just going to try, see how it goes, whether they change the weighting or not. We're not changing the type of exam. We're not changing the fact that there's a minimum score on the exam. We're just weighting it less potentially.
This is Falco. Just as the chief mentioned, I can't read the minds of those officers who didn't submit their letters of interest initially. My understanding is that in some of the back and forth email communications that some officers feel they perform better on written as opposed to oral and vice versa. So if the weighting is going to change and they're better in their minds of presenting themselves in an oral examination context, that now they might feel that they would have a better opportunity to qualify.
So I have Carolyn is texting me. I'm going to be like her and me. So Carolyn said that she thinks because we're already in the process that, and this is how we've gone into the process with the 60-40, that we should keep that in place. I agree with that. I think that we cannot have any appearance of, oh, somebody gets this and somebody gets this, even though we're clear on it and maybe it is exactly fair and it's exactly 90 days and we've changed the date and gone to all that. People don't listen to all those details. They just get, well, he took his, it wasn't really fair. He took his later, so he had more time, even though technically he didn't. So the perception of fairness is just pivotal in this. And remember that this is a bargaining unit also. And so we need to keep everything standardized, everything fair, everything exactly going through. So I have to say, while I understand this board's idea of 50-50 and wanting to change that, I think that, that horse is out of the barn. I think we need to stay with the 60-40, and Carolyn agrees with that. So just to let you know that if you agree on that and it progresses, that both of us don't really support changing it to 50-50, just to let you know that.
And just in response to that, the other option, and one that we had discussed as well, was the potential of rescinding this current posting, basically discontinuing this process until the change could be processed through town council, and then doing a completely new reposting, if you will, after that change was implemented. And that would, of course, delay the hiring process, but that would be another option as well.
Okay, so the decision before us for the personnel board is that we could continue to push the idea that we change from 70-30 composite score for the promotional exam to 50-50, and we could propose that to town council, or we could keep it at 70-30. It's not ideal for us, but we could move forward with that, and that would mean we would stick with the 11 applicants for the exam, and the 12th person does not get to take the test this time around. So we'll need to open that for discussion.
Is it
Or the third
70-30
option.
now, or is it
70.
60-40?
It's 70-30.
I guess,
Or the third option, Chaz, I'm sorry.
good, Falco, sorry.
Or the third option would be to basically halt the process pending the recommended change. That would be the third option.
Just for clarification, and I should know this, I think, but I'm fuzzy on it. What's the reason for the change? I mean, once we present to council, we'll be explaining why we're recommending the change.
At the previous meeting, we discussed that we feel that it should be an equal weight between the tests and the interviews, that some are better at taking tests than interviewing, but for the oral part in today's day and age, there are a lot of important and rigorous questions we need to ask applicants. They're going to be leaders in our police force, and we need to give heavier weight to the interviews than just the test.
So with that being said, are we also going to change the weight on the initial hire?
That's another discussion. Yes.
Yeah.
And Amy, you're right. I did misspeak. I'm sorry. The 60-40 is for initial hires and the 70-30 are for promotions. So I did misspeak there. Thank you. I looked. I get
My
those mixed up.
My only concern with it, the changing of the weight, is the appearance of favoritism, because oral interview is subjective. A written interview is you got it right or you got it wrong.
And I think that's their concern. I think that is exactly what their concern is.
When you say their concern, who are you?
The officers have spoken up and Chief Hawk, tell me if I'm correct. Didn't the officers speak up and say they liked it how it was, that they didn't want it changed to 50-50?
Yes, ma'am. Members of the union approached me after watching our last meeting and said that there was an agreement reached between the union and then town manager Toby Kordick in the mid-90s, where a process went through, and this is before my time, I can't speak intelligently on it, but that they had concerns about that 50-50 weight. They made an agreement with Toby Kordick to change it to the 70-30 that it is now. And
Is that a bargaining point then, Bob?
No,
Not a bargaining point.
it's
Okay.
not
just
a bargaining point.
Okay, just.
And anybody, no offense, Matt, to this. I'm speaking as a manager and as a citizen for a moment. Anybody who thinks that employment situations in the 90s and employment situations when it comes to police in 2021 are the same and should an action taken in the 90s should continue into here is ridiculous in my mind. All of that being said, let's all keep in mind that the council still has a final say and can do interviews of the top 3 candidates. And we can be asking all of those subjective type questions during those interviews of the top 3 candidates to at least be able to catch out of that group who we want. You know, what we're talking about in terms of the change of weight may change the order that council receives the candidates in, but you know, the council would still have that choice from those top 3. So I would say that, you know, rather than the typical interview the council might do, it may get a little more involved to make sure that we get the person from that top 3 that we want.
Well, I don't think the order would change from the written score. If all's changed is the weight,
Yeah,
then the ranking
yeah.
order is going to be the same.
I'm just saying the final list would change based on the weight of the interview versus the written test. But I mean, the test is what it is. They pass it or they fail it. You know, the order that we receive people in will change based on the interviews. So I'm concerned at this point of any appearance of favoritism or.
That would be my concern is that with a higher weighted score on the oral interview, then that could be that perception.
No,
And I would ask Chief if what your opinion is, if you're able to weigh in on this, what your opinion is, if it should stay the same or if there would be a concern on your end with the change.
this is going to sound non-committal, but I'm in agreement with everyone here that has just said that, you know, there is that concern that, you know, even though our intentions are well-meaning, Mr. Groom could speak to this, you know, the officers or certain members may view it that, you know, and Ms. Zachary just said it too, that, you know, changing it midstream, so to speak, you know, is of concern to certain members who I haven't polled the officers. What ultimately I want to do, what, you know, we think as a group makes the most sense to get the best qualified candidate. You know, I've heard positives and negatives for both. I believe certain other agencies in our area have changed the weight in recent times to more reflect that 50-50, but for every one of those, I find another one that is like us and has the 70-30. So I think it's probably a flip of a coin. You know, it's what we think makes the most sense, maybe causes the least grief too. You know, whether that's on the table or not, I have no problems rolling it back if we need to roll it back and make the change. But I would share some concerns that, you know, we'll deal with them when they come if that's the way we decide to go. If you folks decide you want to make the change, we'll move forward with it. You know, it's really what you folks think makes the most sense and gets us the best candidate.
And the change may be appropriate, but maybe after this selection process, put the change in place for the next selection process because of the timing of it. So if we all strongly agree with, or you all strongly agree with that, you know, we don't like the way, in fact, we don't like how this process is at all. We want to just change this whole thing. Then let's take some time when we're not in the push to hire and after this, and then sit down and look at the whole thing and see if the whole thing, what are the new standards? What are the new recommendations? And move on that. Bob is right. Policing is very different than the 90s. And maybe that's how we need to do it. But midstream, I know we are going to get a lot of pushback and there's going to be some problems. And I would like this process to be positive and not filled with conflict if possible.
My main concern is timing. I mean, I know we've been at this a while. We want to get someone in that position quickly. So, you know, I'm inclined to just go with it just to keep it moving. But if a point of a question, I guess, if someone can remind me. So I know when we're doing the new hires, we establish a list, and that list remains for a year or maybe more. Is that the same process with a promotional? Yeah, Bob's nodding his head. So it's we're selecting maybe not only the next promotion, but 2 or maybe 3 down the road as well using this process. Okay.
I don't, Ryan would have to speak to the timing. I know one for sure, depending on retirement, well, one retirement that I'm thinking of, we could limit this selection to 1 and then retest. But at most, I think would be 2.
But all we've posted for is the sergeant's position, right? Not the
Correct.
new officers.
Correct,
Okay.
not for the office.
So it could be changed for the officers. Right?
And I would-
That process has not started. It's the
Correct.
sergeant promotion process that has started.
Yeah.
So
Understood, but I was saying it could be this sergeant plus the next sergeant, foreseeing future retirements. It could be several sergeants or other detectives or other type
Yeah,
of promotions.
I'm thinking it 2 may be selected from this list, but the timing, depending on the timing, we could be in a position to only select 1 and then change things around, retest under the new guidelines. So
Is there a time period that the list expires after 6 months or a year or
a year.
a year? Okay.
I believe you folks, if you chose to, Bob, maybe
We
I'm
could
wrong,
extend 1 year.
if you chose to.
Yes.
And right now we have 1 sergeant vacancy. Depending on when another sergeant goes, he could go at any moment. He may go by the end of next year. Like Bob said, could be 1, could be 2 off of this list, or could be 1 and then we retest with the new standard if
Yeah.
you folks decide.
Yeah, Matt Shipley, could you weigh in on where you are with this?
Yes. When I think it was Falco's talking about it in the beginning, it seems like it's too much hassle right now with it could open us up to a lawsuit, or it could cause a lot of issues. It's too much machinations and delaying the game is not something we should be probably doing at this point. We need to get moving. So I'd say leave it as it is for the time being. If you want to change it for the future, that is something we can look at. But it concerns me that the police union they want it at the 70-30 as it is now. In my mind, we were changing it for their benefit. And if they don't see it as their benefit, well, then I'm not sure why we should change it at that point. I'd like to see us open up the range for to get as many officers and candidates in as we can, and give them the ample opportunity to make it onto the force. I think that's important, but I don't think that the juice is worth the squeeze on this one.
Thank you. So we can put it to a vote. I'm willing to stick with the 70-30. Seems like both Amy and Matt are as well. So motion to continue with the 70-30 composite score for the sergeant's exam. All those in favor, aye.
Aye.
I think I do I vote as an alternate or am I?
You do
Silent.
not.
Okay, sorry, thank you.
Amy, can you vote, please?
I voted aye.
Okay, Matt Shipley.
Aye.
I'm an aye as well. So the motion to continue forward with that composite score is a 3-0 vote, and we'll continue on with the 11 applicants.
Chaz, question for you.
Sure.
Would it be worth asking the chief to let the union weigh in? So moving forward, we know if it's something this is something the union's asking for as opposed to a couple officers?
I'd be willing, if the chief is okay with even a vote from the union. That might be, a stronger argument than one union leader saying that he's speaking for the rest of the police force, but I'll let the chief weigh in on that.
While I appreciate, everyone's perspectives, at the end of the day, and Bob, jump in if I'm wrong, I feel like this is all, we want to do what we think makes the most sense for the town and getting the best candidates, whether it's a promotion or a hiring. Like I said, I appreciate an opinion and all, but I think this is our decision to make. I think this is, you folks, if you want to make that change, then we explore that after this process. To speak to Matt Shipley's point, we want the best candidates. We want to be attractive to folks here as far as hiring and for promoting. I need the best quality candidates I can get to be in this command staff with me, because it is a challenge right now nationwide. We're no different here. I just, kind of the inmates running the asylum comes to mind whenever I hear you ask for their opinion, Chaz. I feel like, I'm in this position. We are on this board to make these decisions, and I would prefer that they stick with us. Just my 2 cents.
Yeah, I'm not sure
And,
I want to go and
go ahead,
survey.
Amy.
Oh, sorry. I was going to say, I'm not sure I want to ask everyone's perspective, because then you're implying that we're going to do what the majority of people prefer. But there's at least one officer who said that they would have been interested had we changed it. So we have at least one person saying one thing and one person sort of with the opposite perspective. So again, I think maybe we should discuss this more as a board, the pros and cons, and look at it for the next round, but keep this one moving, as everyone had said. And then we can also certainly discuss the weightings for the officer selection, and make sure we, now having done this sort of as we began, make sure we do that one before we begin, and go from there.
Any other discussion on that? Okay. And I just would like, go ahead.
Yeah, to Chief Hawk's point, yeah, you definitely don't want the inmates running the asylum, but neither do you want to exclude their perspective on things either. So, there's a fine line to be walked there.
Yeah.
Don't want to fall off on either cliff.
Well, and Matt, to your point, I think getting feedback, thoughts, but I don't want to get to a point where we're asking them to take a vote. You can get feedback and take that into advisement, but in my mind, the minute you ask for something like a vote, they're starting to take too much ownership of the process. I agree with the chief.
Agreed. Agreed. Yeah, what I'm saying is that we shouldn't ignore their opinions. We shouldn't ask them to take a vote or as if they have control over the process, but we need to understand,
Yeah.
their concerns.
Give
Because
us,
it's just a
give us
data,
the-
it's a
give us
data
their
point for our
perspective so
decision.
that we understand the whole situation.
Right, it's a data point for our decision making.
Yes, absolutely. Great way to put it.
Right. And this is Falco. Yes, definitely listening to everyone. This is clearly a management right. The hiring process, promotional process is a management right. So the most you would do, almost in the context of like a meet and discuss, where you would get, as everyone's saying, their feedback. Ultimately, you make the final decision.
And the personnel board is familiar with conducting those kind of things as we did last October, where we spoke with members of the police department. So rather than a survey or something like that, we could simply just talk to members of the police force and get their feel for how they feel the composite score should be.
And they can submit something in writing to the board also, just like any private citizen could. So they certainly can do that. And that's the perspective that I would recommend, is just say, instead of going there and seeking that, I would just say, if you guys have any comments, if you want to send anything in for the board to consider, please do that. You, along with every other citizen, are welcome to give us your perspectives and opinions.
Yeah, I second that motion, because going out and canvassing or soliciting their feedback is a cumbersome process. And if they submit it in writing, they have to think through it and give their reasons why. And that's what we really want, is to understand their reasons, not why, not what they want or don't want, but hey, this is a reason why.
Yeah, just good. Good discussion.
All right. Okay. Agenda item number 3 is police officer exam details. Chief Hawk, would this be you on this?
I could speak to it, Chaz. I think that in previous, is it regarding the qualifications that we were speaking of, Chaz?
That seems to be number 4. It just says on here, number 3 is police officer exam details. So this might be the test for the initial hires.
Yeah, if and when we go through or approve to go through with that, I would recommend sticking with the same company that we're using for the promotional exams. They are vetted through the Pennsylvania Chiefs of Police Association, the Stanard, STANARD company. They have a long, good track history, so to speak. And that process obviously would be, in some regards, it would be similar to what the promotional process would be. That could be rolled out as, at any point, whenever personnel board and council and, town management decide that they want to move forward and establish an eligibility list. I can do that toot sweet.
Any need for discussion on that with sticking with Stanard as the testing company, or any matter relevant to it? Okay, we can move on to agenda item number 4. And this is rules of procedure for police appointments, as we discussed in the previous meeting. This would be 137.05 Rule 2, Section 202, and this is qualifications as an applicant for an initial hire. Are we okay to run down through the list and see if anyone has any recommendations, or did we need to have any prior discussion to that? Okay. Item A is that the applicant be at least 18 years of age. I know in previous meetings we said this might be a moot point based on the criteria in letter B, but do we want to keep the 18 years of age, or do we feel a need to propose a change to that?
Can I speak to that for a moment?
Yes.
Like you said, it might be a moot point because we're also asking for the bachelor's degree. That 18 years perhaps could or should be 21 anyway. I just think about a city of Pittsburgh officer I knew back in another lifetime who got hired before he was 21, and he had to check his duty weapon in at the end of every shift and leave it at the police station because you have to be 21 to take it to and from. So he would come to work and take possession of it, but then he had to leave it at the end of the night. When you're also 18, not that we would have that situation, hopefully, but how are you going to deal with, underage drinking and such? I think 21 probably makes more sense there, but with the other qualifications, perhaps we don't need to worry about the age of 18. Anyone else have an opinion on that?
I think it can't hurt to change it if we're gonna change other things. If that's the only thing we would change and we'd have to take it to the council to vote on, I'd say let's just leave it, but
Matt Shipley, what do you think? Leave it or change it to 21?
Well, I think that a maturity level comes into play too, that 21 years of age is probably a better age, but if like Amy said, if that's the only thing we're going to change is we don't need to change it because the criteria here does make it a moot point. Unless we have some child whiz who goes to college at age 14 and graduates at 18.
Yeah.
That child whiz probably isn't going to be a police officer.
Probably not.
Ouch, ouch.
I'm just being realistic.
You're welcome to apply if they don't want to be a nuclear physicist or something like that.
Exactly.
Okay.
Okay.
All right. Letter B is have a bachelor's degree from an accredited college or university, or have at least 4 years, 8,320 hours law enforcement experience as determined by the personnel board after consultation with the chief of police. So this will be something we need to discuss. Do we want to keep with having a bachelor's degree and also accepting the 4 years experience? Do we want to add in any language about a 2-year degree with some experience or the military experience?
yeah, I think the discussion we had a while back was a 4-year degree, 4 years of experience, or some combination thereof. So maybe a 2-year associate's degree and 2 years of experience.
So is that important that we would accept applicants with a associate's degree, 2-year degree, and some law enforcement experience? It would have to be a combination of the two.
Yeah, I thought, I remember we discussed this last year and that we kind of came to consensus that that would be the best spread to attract the most people. And also I assume the experience would include military police, which is a subsection of the military altogether. And that's, I mean, they're more or less a transferable skill straight into the civilian world.
So we wouldn't necessarily accept military experience per se. It would have to be an MOS in policing within the military. Is that what you're saying, Matt Shipley?
That's correct. I'm not saying that because you went to the military, you're disqualified. What I'm saying is that the experience level that we're looking for is the policing experience.
Okay.
Military police, it would qualify for, in my mind, it qualifies as that. I mean, it's the same context. Maybe it's a different context, but it's the same process and everything else.
Okay. And in that case, it would probably fall under what's already written in the language as previous law enforcement experience.
Correct.
So really, the only language we need to debate is, do we allow for a 2-year degree with some law enforcement experience?
Well, or wouldn't it also be or 4 years of policing experience would be the other
It says that,
potential
yeah.
criteria. And I think the reason, just to provide some context for people who maybe weren't part of those discussions, was there's fewer people interested in policing now. So we're trying to widen the pool and open it up to not just people who had 4-year degree, but people who had similar or equivalent types of experience.
Right. So right now it's 4-year college degree or 4 years of police experience. Do we want to add in the allowance for 2-year degree and 2 years of law enforcement experience? so that we could accept those applicants.
I think
I
you would
agree.
still have to keep it at 4 years though, because
Yeah.
if you're making it 2 years,
Some,
go Bob.
do we just add it in a line or some combination or equivalent combination of education and experience?
Yeah, so you'd have to make it like a 2-year degree and 6 years experience if you're gonna make it equivalent.
Well, no, I guess I'm thinking like a 2-year degree and 2 years of experience.
You could do that, but if you have a 4-year degree and 4 years experience, you've already blown that out of the
It's
water.
or, it's
It's
not
or
and.
now.
It's not and. It's a 4-year degree or 4 years experience. So it's, so you can come right out of a bachelor's, if I'm reading this correctly,
Yes.
right out of a bachelor's and be hired with no experience.
Correct.
Okay, or you can have anything else, any other kind of degree or not, and have 4 years police experience and you're also in. So that's what it says now.
So we could have a quality applicant with an associate's degree and 2 years experience in another police department, and they would not meet our criteria.
Exactly. Or 3 years experience.
Yeah, I was gonna say, if you read it literally, you're correct, Chaz.
I agree with that. It makes sense. But if by making it a 2-year, then you don't need the 4-year specification. You know what I mean? If you're saying a 2 years acceptable, then if I have a 4-year, then obviously I'm okay.
No, because it would be 2-year degree and 2 years experience, or 4-year degree, no experience, or 4 years experience, no degree.
Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah. Those, if we add that.
Yeah, I would make that clear so that people understand.
I think we can just add the line that says 4 years total experience or 4 years education or some combination thereof.
You also want to be clear on, it says accredited college or university. You can get a 2-year degree from a community college, which is, I don't believe are accredited.
They are.
Okay.
Yeah.
Then that's not a concern.
Right.
Okay, so are we okay with specific language that will allow for a 2-year degree and at least 2 years of police experience?
I'm good with it.
Okay. Amy, you're all right with it?
Yep.
Okay. Letter C is licensed by the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania to operate a motor vehicle. I think, obviously leave that alone. D, citizen of the United States of America. Go ahead.
Yeah, that's important. Yet, what if we have a candidate who's coming from out of state who's, licensed to operate a vehicle somewhere else and could easily transfer and become, be licensed to operate one here in the Commonwealth? We would exclude them with that criteria there.
Chief, because I see where Matt Shipley's going with this, and I don't disagree. Let's say that we have a candidate from North Carolina who's been a police officer in North Carolina. So they have the experience, they have everything that we're looking for. How difficult is it for them to then get their Act 120 through us when they've been certified in another state? Do you have an idea?
I believe, and Matt Lucas, if you know something different than I do, if you're coming from out of state, that's why MOPEC, the Municipal Police Officers Education and Training Commission, one of the reasons why they offer that, it's an exam that basically recertifies that an officer has received the proper training. And if they can pass that, I believe the state will certify them in Pennsylvania, and then it would be a matter of then them obtaining their Pennsylvania driver's license upon appointment or something like that, the language could say. We've not had that here, at least not in my tenure. Do you have any out-of-staters that have taken the test in Bellevue recently, Sarge?
We've had 2 recently, and it's just a matter of they have to get their vehicle code, crimes code updated and then take the test. So it's not really a hassle at all. They can have it done before they're appointed.
Then I think, again, in the spirit of opening this up, we should have that ability.
Can we just say be licensed or eligible for licensure in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania?
I think if you make it like Bob said, where it's, they have their Pennsylvania license prior to appointment, just like the residency. And then that way, if for some reason they can't get their license, then they still would be disqualified if that was necessary.
The town could offer a conditional offer of employment if someone reached that stage where they would have to pass that exam through MOPEC and be certified. Otherwise,
Yeah,
towns-
I mean, they're gonna have to be licensed somewhere to operate a motor vehicle if they're a police officer, but they would have to get their certification here. I don't think we should disqualify somebody who doesn't have a PA license.
So do we need to change the language is the question.
I would. Because if I'm reading that as a potential applicant, I wouldn't even take the test because I'm not licensed in PA.
Would we word it as licensed by a state for a driver's license or something along those lines?
Have a valid license to operate a motor vehicle in state of residence. Or something to that effect.
Or be eligible or capable of obtaining a,
PA license.
like, yeah, a PA
Right,
license.
that was my suggestion.
Yeah.
To if they're eligible, which means it hasn't been revoked, right? Sorry, on the move. The office is hard on people.
I mean, even people in Tennessee have the ability to drive a
Yeah.
get a license.
I think you just have to be cautious to make sure they have to have a license to get the job. I mean, they
Yes.
can't be eligible to get it and get the job. They have to have a driver's license.
Yes,
I think what we're trying to do is say anybody in the US can take the test as long as they have a valid license in their state. But
Right.
that by the time they get hired with McCandless, they have to have a Pennsylvania driver's license.
Correct.
Because once they move to the Commonwealth, after 60 days, their out-of-state license is no good anyways.
right.
Well, I'm sorry, what was the time frame to obtain a license?
Well,
60 days.
Okay.
And perhaps Falco has a suggestion of how we would word that. I think we're all saying the same thing. We're just struggling with the semantics of how we would word that.
What? Okay.
No, I was just going to say, yeah, I'm sure that we can capture the intent. You know, we can do some drafts, you know, exchange them and, you know, capture what everyone is intending.
Yeah, I think a better option would be to not vote on what we're agreeing on today. I can rewrite this with the amended changes in it, and then we can present that in a following meeting for a vote, if that sounds okay to everyone.
Or even over email. Maybe it doesn't have to be a meeting. Again, I'm trying to expedite our processes here since it seems to be hard to get everyone together for a meeting.
We
Yeah.
can't do it. We can't do it over email. It has to be open process.
We can wordsmith over email. We can vote in the next meeting.
Does that count as deliberation? Because that sounds a little like deliberation. Falco?
Yeah, I would suggest that a vote be taken today to authorize these changes, you know, capturing the intent of what the board decides. And then from there, you know, we can fine tune the actual language.
Just get it out for review in advance, and then so everyone has their comments ready for the next meeting.
Any other discussion on letter C? Okay, D is be a citizen of the United States of America. Any discussion on that?
Chaz, real quick, did we need to vote on whether we're going to have them make the language suggestions, and did we need to vote on that, or?
How about it at the end? I could run through the proposed changes. We could do a vote to authorize, as Falco mentioned, and
Sounds
then and start drawing up the draft. If that's okay. Matt Shipley, did you get that?
Yeah, I got it. That's fine. I didn't know whether, I just was asking a question, not.
Okay.
anything else.
Okay, E, Chief Hawk, could you elaborate on E with the Act 120 accreditation?
Act 120 accreditation, Chaz?
Yeah. That's still a requirement?
Yes, to be certified in Pennsylvania, I think it's not called Act 120 now, but it's an officer to work here as a sworn police officer. They will have to obtain that. And that's another question, do you change the language as opposed to being certified at the time of application? Maybe that would exclude cadets who are in the process of obtaining their municipal police certification. So maybe the language is tweaked it says that by the time of appointment, they would have that certification or, and be able to take and pass the state exam. I believe that that's required now of all officers that are changing departments to retake that exam.
So would it be common in other departments that they would allow for you to be in the process of obtaining it by the time of appointment and not have it ahead of time?
I believe depending on the department, I'm sure the language is different in each and every agency, but I have seen it where some agencies are taking the applications of police cadets, knowing that they're going to, likely graduate before their appointment and have their certification by the time they are appointed. I mean, there are other agencies, even in Allegheny County, although there are few and far between that are even, and it's something we could consider in the language of, putting someone through an academy. I know Bob and I've discussed that too, where you might, take folks who have a certain type of background that are also considering or willing to obtain their, municipal police certification here. Would the town consider paying and putting them through? That's, a 6-month or so process once you get them enrolled. So it would certainly set back the process, but it's something we could consider. They used to do things that way before I got into this line of work, and some are going back to that.
I can speak to that. When I first started testing, there were agencies that same way I think Shaler, when I tested for them, they didn't require it. But when I sat for the oral interview, I didn't get points because I didn't have it. So candidates already had their Act 120, ended up higher on the list because they had their academy done already. That would certainly open up the pool of candidates, though.
So Chief, we would have the option of making this not mandatory, making this optional and simply awarding more points during the interview process if we wanted to.
When you say we're awarding more points, Chaz, you mean for which candidates?
For initial hires.
For initial hires. If they don't have their certification?
Yeah.
What would happen, I suppose, is if they ended up at the front of the list and it was someone that the town and the police department wanted to explore hiring, but they did not, we accepted and they did not have their certification. Like I said, we would have to send them to an academy. It would probably become a conditional offer that they take, graduate the academy, and then they're appointed here. I don't know if that answers your question. You were talking about additional points of some sort.
I guess what I was getting at is that right now, with our language, they have to have this certification, but there's no state law that mandates that they have to have this, if I'm correct.
In order to apply and take our exam, I don't believe the state mandates that they have that. I mean, we would obviously mandate that they have that before they can take the street for us. But otherwise, other agencies that do offer to hire and put them through the academy likely would not be able to. So I don't believe the state mandates that, but that's right. At this point, that's just an educated guess, Matt, or I'm sorry, Chaz.
Okay,
I believe like an agency like Mount Lebanon or Upper St. Clair still or have went back to considering that, probably for these reasons, to open up the pool of candidates in these times where we
Yeah.
don't have a whole lot of interest,
so do we feel that we need to change any of the language in E? So keep it as is and move on? Okay. F, be of good moral character. Any discussion?
How is that measured?
I suspect that would be part of the background check, ma'am, where we would speak with, former employers, character references, neighbors, check social media sites, check their criminal history, and kind of, what we've traditionally done as far as a background check. Hopefully that would come to light whether they were of good moral character or not.
Anything else on that? Okay. G, be free of habitual addiction of intoxicated liquors or drugs.
Again, I suspect that would come out as part of a background check if they have a history or, such. You would hope that you find that at some point during the background investigation.
When we do our physical exam, are there toxicologies run on these officers or breathalyzers?
Ma'am, I do believe that they take like a urinalysis, whenever, as part of that initial physical.
It's part of it.
So that would be, would that cover that then?
I would think so. Do we also do hair samples or is it just urine? Does anyone know?
I've not heard of us doing hair samples.
Just urine. Although not a bad idea. Amy.
That may be when you get to that part about the physical exam, that may be something that because that certainly is updated technology.
Yeah, it's more expensive, but having just switched employers, my first employer did hair samples, and I was surprised that my second one, who's in the healthcare field, I'm about to start working at Med Express, does not do hair samples. They're much more, you can go back further in terms of drug screening. So I would say we should definitely do that.
Agreed with Amy.
But you'll need to,
Carolyn agrees. Carolyn agrees with Amy also.
Yeah, just a question, Amy. Does it matter that most of the applicants are going to probably have hair about the same length as the chief?
No, it doesn't. They can get hair from other places. Lots of our applicants in West Steel ask that question, and they have arm hair, leg hair, and if they're totally shaven, then that's a whole different topic for conversation then.
Okay, I was just curious. I wasn't sure how that worked.
letter H is indicated willingness to establish residence within a defined geographical boundary. And this is mostly collective bargaining agreement between the union and the town. So I don't think we need to change that, but if there's any discussion, go ahead. Okay. Letter I is be eligible to carry a firearm and be free of conviction of a disqualifying crime in accordance with the police officer's education and training program of Title 37 of the Pennsylvania Code. Any discussion on that? Okay. And then J is such other qualifications which may be proposed by the personnel board and approved by council. So I assume that's a catch-all to have other qualifications, if I'm correct. Chief, is that correct?
Yes, that's how I interpreted Chaz.
Okay. All right. So we would have to vote to authorize changes to letter B and letter C, if I'm correct. Okay, so letter B would be to authorize an applicant to have a 2-year college degree along with at least 2 years of law enforcement experience. And then C would be to allow for licensing in another state to operate a motor vehicle with the agreement that they will have it for Pennsylvania at the time of appointment. Does everyone understand that?
Yes, can I throw something in there?
Sure.
That either or, if you make that change where you take a 2-year degree, does it need to spell out how many college credits, like 60 college credits or more? And as far as the law enforcement experience on that either or, should it say, or do you folks not want 2 years full-time law enforcement experience? Otherwise, you're going to have not that I want to limit it, but you might have an officer who is part-time somewhere and he works, one night a week, and but he's been there for 2 years. Does that qualify? Do we need to, differentiate?
Good point. Good point.
Yeah, I think we should probably be specific, hours or full-time or something of that nature.
Yeah, I
would
think
make
the
it
current
hour.
language, yeah,
Falco,
the current language specifies that for the 4 years, it provides 8,320 hours.
but should we
Right,
do
but we're
I
talking
think we
about the
should do
part-time
same for
addition.
periods.
Yeah, I think what Falco's saying is that for the 2 years experience, we can just cut that 4-year hours in half to 4,000,
Right.
whatever.
Yeah.
Right.
And a certain amount of college credits, 60, I think I've seen in the past from other agencies that do this, something to that, similar to that amount, whatever an associate's degree requires.
Roughly.
And this is something we can amend later with the drafts, but the chief, that is a good point that maybe we need to specify 60 college credits, 4,160 hours of police experience. But again, we can go back and forth with the drafts before we take a final vote. Okay. Any other discussion
Okay.
before we do a vote to authorize?
I'm sorry, Chaz, since you're making those two changes, are you revisiting the age then?
21.
Yeah, I would do that
Okay.
just for consistency's sake.
Okay. So to be clear, we are looking at potential changes to A, to raise the age of 21, B, to allow for 60 college credits and 4,160 hours of police experience, and C, to have a valid driver's license for a state with the intention of also obtaining that for the state of Pennsylvania. So A, B, and C, just to be clear. Okay.
So my question on the 60 hours, you left out associate degree. People can have 60 hours and have no degree. So I would make sure that that's what you want, to say just 60 hours or an associate degree. And if an associate degree is normally 60 hours, then you don't have to really put the 60 hours. But I think they do need to have a degree completion as opposed to just 60 random hours.
Sure. Yeah, I think saying associate's degree would be the proper way to phrase that.
Thank you.
Okay, so are we ready to vote to authorize? Is there any other discussion on that? Okay. All those in favor to authorize proposed changes to 137.05 Rule 2, Section 202, say aye.
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 Aye, so the motion carries 3-0. Okay. Did we need to discuss anything from sections 203 to 206 concerning the application fee, the composite score for initial hires, the passing score for the written test, background check, or physical fitness test?
I think, Chaz, I think the only thing that you would, and we've discussed this in the past, but it may just be the order that you want to take these things. If I recall correctly, we had talked previously other communities, when they're testing, the physical fitness test is part of the initial process, and if somebody fails it, they don't even take a written test.
And we had that actually happen. We offered employment
Yes,
to an individual and he took the physical fitness test and he failed it. And so that was kind of, that actually has happened since I've been on council. That was a little embarrassing.
and I only bring that up because I think we've historically done the physical fitness test as a condition of employment, where we may actually reduce the number of people that are taking the test or being considered because they haven't passed the physical fitness test to begin with.
And I've seen police agencies in the area here that will do them in the same day. We'll do the physical agility test first, and anyone who passes then goes, shortly thereafter into the written portion.
Right.
And it doesn't have to be on the same day, but like Bob said, it could be physical abilities first.
I was gonna say, geez, that's a tough day.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Chief, is this something that we could decide on a later date if we wanted to have the applicants test at the county police academy, or if we wanted to administer something ourselves like other police departments do?
Yeah, absolutely. This is something we can decide further down the road once we, get a process underway, or maybe before we get the process underway.
Okay. All
But
right.
that's the only comment that I had, Chad.
Okay. Was there any need to discuss any of the other items that I mentioned at this time? Okay.
You folks
Okay,
are okay with the weight? I apologize for interrupting, Chaz. I think the weight of that one is 60-40, as the Madam President said.
It's better.
We can, it's already 20 after 10, so we could bring that up at another meeting if we needed to discuss any of that. Number 5 on the agenda is the Citizens Police Academy next steps. I'm not sure who is supposed to weigh in on this one.
That's something that we were going to discuss, I think, or have been in the council meetings. If you folks, have any interest in it, we are exploring that as an option here in the town. I'll say that much.
Yeah, and I think part of that thinking, Chaz, is that we may want to incorporate at least part of one evening into what the hiring process looks like. So we may want to have you folks from the personnel board explain the hiring process for police officers and the promotion process, so that the public who attends this understands what occurs.
Okay.
Okay. So it's something to keep in mind as we're moving forward.
Okay. Was there anything else for number 5?
I also like the idea of us putting on our social media that we're adding or promoting or some kind of public notice of what's going on, and putting what our criteria is for. I think it helps the citizens know the quality of officer that we want, that we're looking for, and the officers we have, that it's just not a willy-nilly, oh, this guy seems nice, or nobody else wanted the job. So I'm about public information, public engagement. So I would really like to see, I know there's people on this meeting, and I know this meeting is public, and I know the agenda and all that is public, but I'd also like to see I'm for getting whatever positive information out about our police department as possible. And I think showing the quality of officers we're looking for is positive. So I would like to suggest that to well as Ryan on their site.
Anything else with number 5? All right. Was there any other business to discuss before we go to public comments? Okay.
Does everybody pick up their appreciation gift from the town for volunteering on the citizen board? Did everyone see that? Get your
Yep, I
notices
got-
of that?
I got mine. It's nice.
Good, good.
They're still
I'm
here
glad.
if you didn't get them.
Okay, if you, yeah, they're still there. So if you all didn't know about it, hear about it, please go pick up your, we do appreciate the service that these board and authorities do. And so it's couldn't have a dinner this year because of COVID. So please pick up your appreciation gift.
Nick, do we have anyone waiting to make public comment?
I know that we have a couple members of the public here. I haven't received anything in the chat or anything before this meeting. So I will ask, I believe the two here, Ramona and Rita, if they have anything or if they'd like to. Ramona, I believe you're unmuted if you're there, if you would like to.
I just thank you very much for the opportunity to ask a question. That's why I had two questions that I wanted to understand. One is when hiring and you ask for experience, police experience, is there any requirement that their performance in that experience was satisfactory? You may have someone, and there's been problems in the past in other departments where that the performance had raised questions. And I wonder if, I don't have the written material, so maybe it's already written in there, but I just wondered if there was anything there. The second question I had related to the interview, I just wondered if it was possible to understand how that is scored, how that's measured, whether there's a set of questions with points or how that actually functions. Thank you.
I could try to field the first question there. We do, as part of the background check with current and former employers, and try to get as complete a picture as we can regarding any work performance they have, good, bad, or otherwise, ma'am. And in fact, the state is going to, it's not in force yet, but they are in the process of having a statewide system where police employers must report to the Municipal Police Officers Education and Training Commission whenever an officer, they plan on hiring them so that they can obtain records from the state, or whenever there's a separation, and there has to be, or there will have to be, reasons given for separation, so that if there's circumstances that are questionable, the state will have a database, and potential employers will receive that information from the state as well. But traditionally, before that is in place, we do our due diligence in background checks and attempt to identify any problematic prior behavior or work performance. And that would all go into, it would be all part of the process, and would go into whether or not we would, extend an offer of employment or not.
And then during the interview process, there is a score sheet that the personnel board members conducting the interview will actually be tallying points based on the answers to the questions. And then, a score is derived from those. And, that's all well documented, and it can of course be somewhat subjective, but there is a specific point system when we do the interview process. Were there any other questions?
Any other questions?
Did you check with Rita?
No, I thank you also for just allowing us to listen in. It was very informative. Thank you so much. I have no questions.
I would agree. It was very informative and very helpful to see how carefully you're going through each of these questions.
Mhm.
Any other public comment? Okay. Before adjourning, do we need to discuss the next meeting date, or is that something that Nick, you'll do by email?
Yes, certainly. But just to, give me kind of a general guide here, do we want to meet again around the same time frame, like maybe 2 or 3 weeks from now, or, maybe end of next month? What are the board's thoughts on that? And what do we want to, what's kind of still left hanging in terms of what we want to put on the next agenda and things of that nature?
It will be difficult for me to meet mid-morning on a weekday. I'm currently
Sure.
between jobs and on vacation, but
Mhm.
Monday through Friday, until about 6, I would say I'll be unavailable.
Do we want to look at scheduling about a month out from right now, so mid to late April?
Yeah, I can.
Yeah, let's, we definitely need a month out from, we scheduled this one because we needed a quick decision, but sometime in April, we need to re-adjourn, and also Thursday evenings are no good for me.
Yeah,
Do your magic, Nick. We'll
Yeah,
just-
yeah, I'll do the best I can.
Do
It
your
might be-
that voodoo thing you do to make the schedules come.
I find at
Matt.
least one time. for-
It's really it works out better than anything I've seen anyone else doing, so I like it.
And I'll try to make sure we don't have any Zoom difficulties at the beginning of next meeting we have for this one. So appreciate your patience.
Just take into consideration all of council's meetings and subcommittees and that, because Carolyn and I are on a bunch of other stuff, so.
Of course. Yeah.
Thank you.
And no overlap with other council meetings.
Right, thank you. Mhm.
Well, thank you all for your time.
All right, motion to adjourn.
I'll make the motion to
All
adjourn.
right.
Enjoy
Okay,
your
that-
last day there, Amy.
Thank you. Yes. All right. Thanks for facilitating, Chaz. Good job.
sure,
Thanks, everybody.
thanks.